had his choice, he would be off in a room by himself. That's how I answered the questions. And then one of the things it said was like building that rapport and that relationship with Maxwell.
Yeah.
And one of the most simple things you can do is just sit down and play with them for 30 or
Yeah.
40 minutes. And
Yeah.
so literally I got out my planner and like set aside days to like,
Yeah.
okay, this is a 30-minute block. I'm not scheduling anything
That's
else.
for play, for building rapport.
Yes. Yes.
So,
For kids, it's easy to just sit down and just do whatever they're doing.
right.
But
Right.
I definitely have to be more intentional with Maxwell. If you're needing new systems and new routine into your special needs or neurodiverse home, this is the episode for you. We're not just talking about different organization systems and different routines, but we're going to get down to some of the emotions and some of the mental shifts that you can make in your home in order to thrive as an autism parent. Today, we're going to get an exclusive interview with the CEO of ThriveGuide, a company that has become established to help you as a parent get a head start. It doesn't matter the wait list. ThriveGuide allows you to have an organized map specifically built for your child. So the first question I always ask anybody, Jonathan, is just how you got started. Like, kind of tell us your story of how you got here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kimberly. So I would just say that there's kind of two parts. There's getting into the field of autism and working directly with parents, and then there's Thrive Guide, although they're highly related. So I'll just start with the first part really quickly. Um, uh, I, at a very early age, was interested in education. I'm going to say something that's a bit embarrassing, but I remember being quite precocious early on and sitting in grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, right? Like, what did I know? Kind of sitting there a little bit like, I think this class could be taught a bit better, like, uh, or like asking the questions like we always do as a kid, which is, why are we learning this stuff? But anyway, the point is, I got interested in education really early on and ended up getting into kind of psychology, child development, and that kind of stuff. But I had an opportunity in my early 20s to go down to an autism center in the States in Massachusetts where I saw play therapy for the first time in my life. I had studied behavioral science like Lovaas and Skinner and Pavlov and all of that behavioral science, which is so important to understand those foundational principles. But then I saw play therapy. And of course, as a young guy in my early 20s, I thought, I want to do that because it looked really fun. So
Mhm.
I jumped in, and that was actually my first exposure to the autistic population, to autism. Actually, I'd read some books and stuff, but that was really live and in person. And I gotta say, I just, first of all, I fell in love with the families, fell in love with the kids I was working with, but my mind really was strongly stimulated and triggered by how can I help these children, how can I help these families. And as you know better than anybody as a parent, there are so many
Mhm.
options, right? Special diets, ABA, play therapy, occupational therapy, and it goes on into like some really crazy stuff, right? Swimming with
Right.
dolphins or all sorts of stuff. And I'm not saying if anyone has had the child swim with a dolphin, it helped you. God bless. I'm
Right.
not judging it, right? There's lots of stuff. But just to bring you right up to speed of where I am today, um, working with several thousand families in a private practice and hearing all the time, Jonathon, what do you think of this? What do you think of vitamin B12, methylcobalamin? What do you think of special ed? What do you think of going to the Sunrise program, the play therapy? What do you think of ABA? And my answer was always pretty simple. Um, is there evidence behind it, some kind of science or evidence? Does it do any harm? Can't do any harm
Right.
possibly. Maybe get it like a zero effect. Sometimes you try something that doesn't really work, but you don't want to harm.
Mhm.
But then thirdly, and this is the most important part, Kimberly, which is this right for your child, your unique child?
Mhm.
Right? You know that I see you shaking your head, right? Because as a parent, you go into chat groups, you talk with other parents, and they say, "Oh, this really worked for my child." So you think, I got to do it. And what I want to encourage parents to do is to pause and say, "Okay, that's amazing. It worked for your child. Does my child match your child's profile? Would I be doing it for the same? Does my child need that?" So I started to specialize in multi-treatment, which is, and basically choosing from all that's out there what let's say treatment map, if I could use that word, or what would sort of uh, therapy plan will best match my child. And I'm not talking about in ABA where we decide what goals should a child have. That's within one ABA program, let's say. I'm talking about from choosing from all of the choices of different approaches and things you can do, what's going to match my child, my family's values, our financial, abilities, my time that I have or don't have, considering all of those things, what's going to be a best fit approach. So that's what I've been specializing in the last 20 years is treatment mapping and helping parents figure that out. That's what ThriveGuide is, the digital version of.
Yeah. I love that. That's so I was nodding my head and smiling because one of the things that people are really drawn to when they get onto my socials is the sensory room. And they're like, oh, like what sensory, if you had to pick one item, what sensory item would you buy for your child? And I say, they kind of like scoff at me because I say exactly that. I'm like, well, it depends on your child. Like,
It depends. My two favorite words. It depends. You got
Yep. Which they don't usually appreciate, but maybe don't
no.
when I offer. I'm like, here's my other things I do offer to hopefully help you figure that out. But don't shoot the messenger. Absolutely. I love, and so I know we just chatted a little bit, but we've currently like mapped out my 7-year-old in our home, and it's very unique to him. I do like that I ask questions not only about him, but about our family and about
Yeah,
kind of our situation, because everyone's family life and situation is different. We have a very flexible schedule where sometimes people don't have that. So
you got it.
I think that's a beautiful system that you've set up.
Thank you.
So who is this resource designed to help? Who's your main target audience that you're looking for?
Yeah, so we're talking about ThriveGuide. So the private practice I talked about the last 25 years have worked with several thousand families globally around the world. And as I said, so just a little bridge to what we're talking about today is um, had a lot of requests for work over the years and got to a point where couldn't help as many families as I wanted to. Had a pretty small boutique kind of practice, and so I got together with someone who really backed this project to say, how could we take what we've learned from sort of 25 years of work and the expertise we have and get it out to tens of thousands of families, and in particular families who can't fly to where I am or afford to do that kind of one-on-one work, parents that are just low resources, maybe in a remote area, I don't know, in the Northwest Territories of Canada or in India or like wherever it is in the States. We wanted to get a resource that's affordable. So we price this as under $100. You can get online. It takes about an hour to do the intake. That's probably the most resources you're going to put because an hour is precious. You know that, Kimberly,
Yep.
as a parent, right? I mean, and we're trying to bring that time down, by the way, working hard. But that's the intake. That's us collecting some information and really getting to know as much as we can a profile of your child. And then you literally hit a button when you're done, you click, and it generates 5 recommendations. It chooses from a whole list of over 100 possible professional recommendations that would match your child's profile. And then we give you sort of action plans to walk through it. So um, that when I designed that, the algorithm behind it, all of the content that we created, it was really for a group of between 2 years old, so almost as young as you can get diagnosed, up to about 11 or 12 years old. That's sort of kind of the range. So early diagnosis through to a whole number of years. And I would say on if I can use this term, sort of level 3 autism, level 2 autism, so lower functioning. I know that's not a nice word these days, but so children who are either non-vocal or aren't verbalizing, really, it does cover a range. But probably the group that it's not best for would be an early adult, like 20, 21, 30, looking for employment, a parent saying, how do I help my child move out of the house? We don't have curriculum on ThriveGuide for that right now, but for the rest of y'all, I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I agree. And I like to, so I'm a nurse by profession. And
Yes.
so evidence-based practice is like music to my ears. So I like that it not only gives you recommendations when it gave me out recommendations for my son, but it also gives you that evidence-based practice. It gives you like a resource and then it's like, hey, this is why we're recommending this to you.
That's right. There's the why that's explained,
Mhm.
let's say for the layperson. You're a nurse, you have medical training, there's that. But we were committed, I was committed from the very beginning to provide at least one peer-reviewed, published research article to support every recommendation that you get. And you'll see that there's literally a link that says research, and you can
Yeah.
click on as a parent, and you can go to the actual published research, whether it's at the NIH or wherever it is, PubMed. But what we took the time to do, it took us actually over 6 months to do, is we did sort of executive summaries, layperson summaries. So if you're not educated at the level of reading, like what's randomized controlled trial, double blind study, which is what you would
Right.
know, Kimberly. But we put it in just like sort of everyday parent speak. And so we think that's really cool. It's helpful so you can know that there's evidence behind all of what we do. Yeah.
Right. Because you're right. There's so many things out there, and this is a community that once helped so bad. Sometimes they just will eat it all up. So I love that you give recommendations, but you show us the evidence behind it. Like this can work because it's X, Y, and Z. And I think that that really does help parents that we're trying to do the best for their kiddos. They just don't know where to
It
start.
gives you
So
confidence, right? I know that you're a believer that the circle of care. As a nurse, you'll
right.
understand you're treating someone, but they have maybe a husband or a spouse or a grandparent, kids, and if you can empower that circle of care to participate in the healing or the health of this patient, that's the best. And we think that around autism too. Of course, moms are often sort of like these warriors, these mom warriors who become
Absolutely.
doctor moms and all of that. So I'm saying that because we built into ThriveGuide, first of all, a share feature, so that if you see a cool recommendation, a cool one that you're like, oh my gosh, my son's teacher should see this, you
Awesome.
can just click share, put their email address, and they'll get that. They'll be able to actually come on the platform and read the recommendation and see the research, right? So that then they can also see, oh, this is evidence-based. That's good. So we thought that the evidence was really important, A, because we believe in evidence-based practice. But if the parent is going to talk with a doctor about the recommendation, or a speech therapist, if you have a speech therapist, you could go and say, hey, I got this ThriveGuide recommendation. Could you help me implement this? Which, by the way, I just want to say one point. ThriveGuide is not meant to be a program in its entirety to replace other programs. I mean, a
Right.
parent who's just starting out, who is on a waiting list for ABA or for something, or even for a school placement, could start these recommendations right away. And so we think it can be a self-contained program in that way. But if your child is already getting ABA, let's say 10 hours a week, and at a homeschool or in a school situation, the Thrive Guide gives you recommendations that as a parent, you can use in your home during your basic parenting time, just to give you goals and things to focus on so that you can feel that you're also part of some really clear goals.
That's one of the things that I always preach is our as parents, we kind of become speech therapists, OTs, teachers without even trying to because we're trying to research. And this gives you a very quick and very easy stepping stone to make those first accommodations in your home.
Yeah,
I mean, we still have speech, OT, ABA once a week. We
yeah.
were doing 50 plus hours of crazy therapy a week, but we've been
Wow.
able
Yeah.
to tailor it down over the years because we've had good therapists that have taught us along the way. And this would be a great program to implement those steps as well, to be able to
Yeah.
maybe, like, I personally, I think that you still need some of that professional instruction, even if it's just for like
Totally.
I need to recap and make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do at home to keep me accountable. But I think that it's a good stepping stone to maybe cut down on those hours of therapy because that did make a huge difference when we were able to go from 50 plus hours of therapy a week down to 3. And I just felt like we got our family back, we got our time back. And this is a great, I think, stepping stone to help other families
Oh,
get
that's
there.
interesting. I
That's what
hadn't
they
thought
want to
about
do.
it that way. It's so important that professionals like myself, like a speech therapist, empower parents with knowledge
Absolutely.
and strategies. And if I could just give a tip, I'm sure that you did this because you're a strong advocate and you're smart. So you probably did this almost naturally. I really encourage parents to not do if you're working with a speech therapist, occupational therapist, AB person, don't do the drop your child off and then wait for an hour and then pick them up system. In other words, don't just go home thinking, oh, well, the therapy's done. What I encourage parents to do is find a professional who will give you 5, maybe even 10 minutes, carve it out of those 45 minutes, carve it out of the hour once a week, once every other day, whatever it is, and say, I'd like you to work with my child for 40 minutes and then train me for 10 minutes. And whether it's
Absolutely.
that they watch you with your child and give you feedback, or, while your child's bouncing in the corner for a second, try not to talk about your child in front of your child, as you would agree.
Right.
But if you can get them to give you tips, strategies, homework to do at home, think about if you're getting that once a week, over 3 or 4 months, we're talking about 10 or 15 little mini trainings you just got as a mom that
Right.
you're going home doing that homework. And the results you're going to get from that speech therapy are going to be magnified times 5, times 6, times 7, because you're empowered to continue at home.
Exactly. Yep. That's one of the big things about that's one of the whole missions behind supporting Autism Mama, my little brand that I've tried to create is that the ability to empower parents. Because if we, let's say we can only afford, because there's money, there's an insurance thing, that goes into play into
Yeah.
all this. Let's say we
Yeah.
can only afford 1 hour of speech therapy a week. But if I found a good speech therapist that's going to educate not only my child, but also me, then my child's going to
Yes.
get speech therapy all day, every day, if I implement it correctly at home. Things that we really talked about in the month of August. So I have like little themes every month, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
that I try to really kind of focus on. So we have like a focus for the month. And for the month of August, our theme was prep the parent. So we're talking about all the different systems and different things that we can do in our home to kind of like ease back into the back to school transition that we're in right now. So if you had to pick one system, so I know a lot of my audience just kind of feels like they're drowning in parenthood, drowning in motherhood, just trying to, check off all the to-do list. If there was one system that you would pick for a drowning mother or a drowning parent, what would you suggest for them?
It's like if I could pick one system, in my mind, Kimberly, I'll just be honest, my mind went to things like organizational systems and Excel spreadsheets and filing systems and all of that kind of stuff that, as you know, could be like lifesavers for parents.
Yeah.
And you see some awesome tips on Instagram these days, right? Like I saw one mom recently that said, when you're making your kids breakfast, make them lunch at the same time, and you only have to wash the knife once. Like this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, like just like little time savers. But what came to me, the system that came to me is actually a social system, and it didn't have to do filing stuff and organization. It actually is a social system. And what I mean by that, or I should say relationship system, something that drains our energy as parents, it drains our energy as therapists, and that isn't nice for kids either, is when we have to repeat ourselves a whole bunch of times. And sometimes we feel defeated because we're like, I told you 5 times. What? How many times do I have to ask you? You ever heard that sentence? I
Yes.
have, right?
I mean, I
And
probably
when you're
said it.
saying that how many times, and you're sort of saying that to yourself and to your kids, but it's a flag. And it's a red flag that you should pay attention to. All right. So if you're finding yourself, how many times have I said this to you? Or how many times do I have to ask you? It's a red flag that you could be using this other system that's actually going to make it so it's the answer is often only one time, and it's this. We pay attention a lot. When I say we, my therapist teams that I still work with and train, and the parents I work with, we pay attention a lot to what we call receptivity. Okay. And it's just a fancy word that simply means, is your child, your autistic child, right now in this moment when you have to communicate, or whether it's ask them a question, give them a command, maybe tell them you love them, it's bedtime, whatever it is, are they currently receptive? Are they open? Are they dialed in? Are they receptive to your communication? Okay, and I'll give you a quick. And by the way, so the answer is, if they're not receptive, if you can tell this is a moment when they're not receptive, then don't waste your breath or your energy on trying to communicate to them a really important thing. Instead, spend your time and energy building the rapport and the receptivity, and then communicate. I'll give you a quick example if I could. So you walk into your favorite coffee shop, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, wherever you go. In Canada, we go to Tim Hortons Donuts, and you walk in, and I bet you 100% of parents listening or professionals listening right now would not walk up to a counter where there's nobody, or if the coffee person is talking or chatting, and place an order, because the person behind the counter is not receptive. This happens at Starbucks. I know, I go there and you walk in and sometimes they're chatting to each other, telling a joke, or they're talking to each other. And I got to stand at the counter just for a second. And then they turn around and go, "Oh, hi, sorry, how can I help you?" And I look in their face and I see they're receptive, meaning they're present with me. They're not busy doing anything else. And then I place my order. And we're all good at that. And in fact, we're so good at knowing I'm not going to place order to thin air or to nobody that's not listening, that if we walk in and we're in a rush, we'll even try and get receptivity. We'll say, "Oh, excuse me. Hey, hi," like this. And yet with our kids, I think we often as parents assume that they're receptive because we gave birth to them and they're in my house, right? Like, and they should be
Right.
listening, but they're not receptive. And if you have a child with autism, you already know they're often distracted by other things. They might be involved in a repetitious behavior, a sensory experience, or whatever it is. And so I would argue that for the autistic population, they're often not receptive when we want them to be. And so it's so important for you to be a receptivity sort of a sensor, if you will. Okay, so here's what it looks like. I'm about to say to my child, "Hey, get your backpack or get your shoes on," or I want to help to usher them in that way. And I walk in, and instead of saying it, I look at their body, I look at their face, I look at what they're doing. If they're involved in activity, if they're doing a repetitious behavior, if they're making a loud sound or whatever they're doing, don't give them the command yet. Okay. Instead, the system is go and build that receptivity, which may be as much as simply just getting in front of them, right? It may be as much as having some kind of physical contact that kind of helps them to connect with you. It might be about joining in their activity for 1 minute, which seems like impossible if you're a busy mom, but 60 seconds invested, and I'm going to tell you what it does. I build rapport, receptivity. My child looks up and smiles, and I say, "Hey, guess what? It's time to get your backpack." And what we find, Kimberly, is when we make sure that a child is receptive, like in the coffee shop, when we make sure that the barista is actually there and listening and we place the command, that 99% of the time it gets filled, that at least the child understands and they either try or they give me a hard no, but at least I know they understood that I
Right.
want something, right?
Yep.
And so that system, going back to school, you've got so much stuff going on. The last thing you also need is to be talking to a child who's not receptive, because they're also busy and involved in things. So save yourself the energy, save the time, and have a much higher compliance rate when your child is receptive. I could go on about how do I know if my child is receptive, but most parents will tell you, I know the look in my child's face when they're dialed in and present and when they're not.
Right. Yeah, even I mean, I have a couple kiddos, but especially my like non-speaking one, I still know when he's here with me and when he's stimming or wherever Max goes. I don't know. I would love to be a part of it, but I don't know where he goes. But
So can I ask you, Kimberly,
mhm,
you're saying, I know, and we often say red light, green light is unlike red light is not receptive.
right.
So it's not a time for me to place commands, demands, and that,
Mhm.
and green light. But so you're a parent saying, I know with my middle one, Maxwell,
Yeah.
when he's like that, how often would you say that you also end up repeating yourself and going after him and you're not checking to see if he's receptive, even though you're telling me I know when he's receptive?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to I put like 5,000 things on our to-do list every day, even if it's my own personal to-do list. And so I know about myself that when we need to leave the house or if I have something planned and we need to go do it right now, I get very anxious when everyone's not doing exactly what I want them to do when I want them to do it
Right.
because I'm a very
Yeah.
timely person.
Yes.
And so I really like that whole concept because I know when Maxwell's not listening to me or when they
Yeah.
are, someplace else.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll still repeat that same thing. I told you to go get your shoes. I told you, like, I'll say
Right.
it over and over. And I'm like, he's not even listening to me. Why? Like,
He's not
why?
even listening. Yeah. You say that to yourself. He's not,
Yes.
and there's the red flag. Wait, if I'm
Yes.
saying he's not even listening to me, why am I talking to thin air? Like in some
Right.
ways, like
It's
that
really
ball.
just making it harder on me. It's not even
Making
actually
it harder
accomplishing
for you, get
anything.
more
Yes.
frustrated, and the child isn't having success either because they're not receptive. And
Right.
so I tell parents, you ask me for a system, I tell them this is a time saver, it's an energy saver, it's a patient saver, because I'm simply not going to, unquote, waste my time and spend that effort if my, and it doesn't mean we'll sit back and wait for your child to be receptive. as I say, you're going to wave to the barista or say, excuse me, right? So, but instead of placing the command of go get your shoes, sweetheart, to your child, what you do is you take that time and you build the receptivity and the rapport.
Yeah.
And then when you ask them, the compliance is going to go.
One of the things that I'm really trying to do in school, I read about the importance of the pause, like when we're teaching. And so I think that that is just something that we can implement even into that. Just walk into the room, pause, see what's going on. 7 years into this, we have lots of systems in our homes. We have lots of accommodations. We have lots of things set up. And yet some days we still have what feels like meltdown after meltdown.
Mm,
If you like look on my social, it looks like we like have this like picture perfect life and we never have meltdowns and we have all these accommodations in place. And yet, I mean, we still have meltdowns in our home on a regular basis.
sure, sure,
And
sure.
so, how is something that, as a therapist, at your standpoint, how you deal with meltdowns and then also regressions? That's something that my 7 year old, I feel like we hit a bunch of milestones. And then me and my husband were just talking about this last night. I mentioned something about, I'm like, I feel like he's just not, he was listening so good. And now doesn't feel like he's listening anymore. He likes to like just walk around in his diaper. We were keeping our clothes on, which
Hmm.
sounds so small, but it was such a big win. And
Yeah,
Jason's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
well, it's been about 3 or 4 months, and we typically hit some regression around every 3 or 4 months. It seems like we hit some regression and then we have another spike. So,
yeah.
from a therapist standpoint, what is something that we could put into our home or everyone's home to help with some of those more difficult times like that?
Jump in with the regression thing, first of all, just in a very, very playful way, I would say that a regression is a bit of an abstract concept. And what I mean by that is it's really when you're measuring against something that you have a regression. Obviously, by definition, like we were here. You might say, Jonathan, what are you talking about, dude? Like we were here and now we're over here.
Right.
That's a regression.
Hmm.
But what I mean by abstract concept is it's a bit of a negative when we say regression, right? Then we think like it's bad. This is not a good thing. We're losing ground. He was here, now he's back here. It's not a good day for us. I think it's really helpful for parents in that case to see if you could take some of the good out of it, and I'll tell you what it is, and use that good to drive you forward. And that's this. I work with hundreds of parents whose child doesn't speak. Okay. And they're just praying to God every night for a sound. That's what they want. And a parent who had a child who was saying some words and then now isn't got what all of these other parents are praying for a
That's
little
right.
while.
Hmm.
And but I'm telling you this for a reason. Okay. You got something. And even though it's not there today, what you got, the gift that you got, that your child was able to say words, is evidence that your child's brain, neurology, motivation can make those sounds or can use the toilet or can put on his shoes, even though he's not doing it today. You have something that a lot of parents don't have, which is some evidence. And what's good about that is that evidence gives you some hope and drive to go for it, to really like, this is possible, man. He's used the toilet before. I don't know why he's not using it today, but he can do it. So I'm going to give you two strategies in that case in regression. One is keep focused on my child can do this. He's not doing it today. He's not doing it right now, but he can do it. And that's a very different framing than, oh, he's regressed. What do we do wrong? Oh my gosh, this isn't good. I'm feeling not good about this. That's natural. I get it. But
Yeah.
see if you can shift your focus and attitude. And I want to tell you why that's important, Kimberly, is I have seen up front and up close that when we get despair, when we get sad, when we get discouraged, right, which is all normal and natural. For any parents listening, if you're feeling discouraged, I'm not judging that. I'm telling you, it's normal, it's natural, it's part of the journey. But you'll agree that the discouragement or the sadness pulls at your energy. It makes you less creative. It makes the day harder. It makes you look up at the sky and yell a bit. But when we say to ourselves, you know what, he can do this, it's possible. He showed me. I know this is possible. We get this sort of excitement, this drive, and we're much more likely to try. We're much more likely to be persistent, but happily persistent. We're much more likely to cheer because our cup is half full. So our attitude impacts how we behave. So that's the first thing, is just to reframe it. Is in some ways it's like, hey, you know what? We're in some ways, the reason we're having a regression by definition is because our child was able to do this. That's a
Hmm.
good thing.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
use that.
true.
Here's quickly the second thing, and that is almost by definition, and I'm talking from a biological perspective here, is if your child was able to do a skill, whatever it is, cognitive, whether it's language, or again, whether it's something physical like open a jar, and they're not able to do it right now, something is almost certainly physiologically, unless you think that there's a motivation thing, a relational thing. A child might be really, really controlling and like, I can do it, but I'm not going to do it for you.
Yep.
I mean, so it could be relational. But my point is, there's almost always 99.9% of the case that I've worked with, there is a factor that we can tweak, change, shift, identify, and go and move forward again. Okay, just by almost definition of regression is my child was able to do it. The neurology can do it. His brain can do it. His motivation can do it. He understands. That's how you flush the toilet. And if it's not happening, then something has occurred that we could try and identify. And why this is important again is for parents whose child has never used the toilet, we don't yet know that there's something that's going to get there. We hope, but we just don't know. But if you
Right.
work backwards, it's almost always something that you could tweak. So, my last point is, don't get focused on the regression. Don't focus on, oh my God, he's regressed. Get focused on, okay, let's get curious and investigate, become investigators. Maybe it's this variable here. Maybe something has changed in the bathroom. Maybe we're using new toilet paper. Maybe, oh my gosh, you know what? We've just put in new lights. I didn't realize we used to have fluorescent lights. Now we have these other lights in the bathroom because we remodeled. And it's so true that since we replaced the lights, he's not going in there. Oh my God. Like these are the kind of things we figure out, right? We put new tiling on the floor, and we realized that the new tiles in the hallway or the bedroom are colder now, or they have a different texture, and he couldn't communicate that to us. But no wonder he's running in the hallways all the time, but we taught him how to walk. So you got to become curious and investigate.
Last month, we focused on activities of daily living, and that was one of the things that I really tried to drive home, because that's one of the biggest differences that happened in our home, was when we took those ADLs that our kiddos were struggling with and broke them down into that like task analysis, where when I say go get dressed, it's not, I hear go get dressed, but my son just heard like 30 different steps he needs to do to go put a shirt on. And so I think that that is very important, and that's a good thought. I like that mind shift. What's something that we could start today to just make tomorrow easier?
Integral part of all the programs I run is celebrating and gratitude. Sounds like a Hallmark card or a fridge magnet, right? But man, our tanks can be empty, right? We can be
Mhm.
like, even at lunchtime, we're like, God, I don't know if I have enough juice in the tank to get through to
Yep.
school pickup. Um, and when we are grateful, when we have gratitude and we notice little what I call little sprouts in the garden. When I was young and my grandma had a garden, and as a little kid, I liked to pull the carrots out of the ground because it's so cool. You'd see the green tops and you pull the whole carrot out, right? Wow. And pull the tomatoes off. I thought that was really cool. And I tell that in the video this week, the story that my grandmother would walk along, and of course she was the gardener, so she would be looking for the little tiny sprouts coming up or the little buds. I was looking for the fully formed fruit. And looking back now, I realized she was looking at the little sprouts so she could nurture them, and whether she'd get a bit of extra water on that little sprout coming up, or sometimes even caress or talk to a little bud coming out. And I think about working with families now and how important it is that, let's say you're trying to get your child to do something like, again, put on their shoes, or it might even just be form a word, or to learn how to chew your food more, keep your food in your mouth. And you said a minute ago, you give your child a command and there's like 50 little micro steps.
Mhm.
So how do we celebrate and cheer each of those micro steps in that development, right? And so one thing you could do today to help yourself tomorrow have more energy and have a brighter vision of it and wake up with looking forward to today, tomorrow, is to really look at these little sprouts, these little micro things that you could cheer in your child, but also in yourself, right? As a parent, you are like, think about what you've done today, Kimberly. I'm sure there's one thing that you did today that you haven't celebrated yourself about and say, you know what, I'm being a good mom. I'm trying my best. Like I did this actually. I made this phone call to a doctor for an appointment I needed, or I ordered this sensory toy online, or I read a poem just to give me some hope and inspiration so I could show up for my kids at breakfast, before I went to breakfast, to cheer yourself on as a parent that you're making those steps, as small or big as they are, will recharge your batteries and give you hope. So if you don't have a practice of gratitude or cheering yourself on or celebrating little steps, that would be something I would say would really help.
I feel like as parents, especially to, the special needs population, we're really, really good about celebrating every single milestone that they hit, whether it's like picking up a fork and putting the fork to our mouth. Like we celebrate every little bitty thing. But as parents, sometimes we forget exactly that. Like, hey, I did this to help my kiddo today. I didn't do this maybe to help my kiddo today. And I think that that is super powerful and actually leads in really well. So next month, in September at Supporting Autism Mama, our whole theme is But First Mama. And so,
Oh,
one,
terrific.
because that's something that I'm not very good about. And so I just kind of
Yeah.
want to be the leader in the charge and hopefully change that at home to hopefully help other moms be willing to do that too. Because it's, for whatever reason, that's one of the hardest things I think that we do is like, we give everything to our kids and forget that, we need to put a little bit back into us in order to give them the best that they can have.
I love that. I want to celebrate you, Kimberly. I think there's a lot of platitudes, right? People hop on Instagram, hey, you got to take care of yourself. And when we hear that, we go, you want to come to my house? Like,
Right.
I don't have a
Mhm.
minute to,
That's right.
people say, hey, you should go get your nails done and take a day off. And they're like, I can't do that.
Right.
And so to spend a month on, all of your content that you're creating and supporting parents, for you to spend a month focused on that and really leaning into how can a parent who's maxed out, overwhelmed, a single mom, for example, with two, I worked with a single mom with three jobs, and, I was calculating as a professional, helping her, like, gosh, can I even give her something more to
Right.
do? And she was
Right.
asking me, and I was trying to figure out what can I give to you that wouldn't overwhelm you more. Anyway, it's going to be a great month that you'll be focused on that. So good
Yes.
stuff.
People want to find you, sign up for Thrive Guide if they want to just find you on socials. Where would be the best place for them to be able to do that?
Yeah. So www.thriveguide. And if you can't hear that, guys, it's thrive as in for your child to thrive and for you to thrive. And then the guide, GUIDE, Thrive Guide, all one word, .co. It's not .com, it's .co. That's our website. Everything is there. I'm also on Instagram, ThriveGuide.co. That's there too. And as I say, you can sign up for our email. So those are the places. Um, I will just, if I can throw it out for those of you who are interested in a real attitudinal approach. I'm, the shift we were talking about with regression, just reframing it. I wrote a book that you know about, Kimberly, called Challenging the Myths of Autism. And that book is 7 stereotypes or myths. And I reframe them for you as parents to have a mind shift around how you could approach, whether it's choosing programs for your child, the relationship you have with your child, all sorts of things. I think that's a great resource.
Any closing remarks you'd like to add to our episode today?
You and I, in our conversation, I was just aware of how much we were talking about kind of, I guess you call it attitude, or like what's
Yeah.
going on in my mind and my feelings. And I think when we talk about systems and we talk about strategies so much, we sometimes gloss over, don't get to, hey, how you feeling? And sometimes that's a big conversation to unpack. But I guess my parting word would be, both in my book, in my work, and in Thrive Guide, we really recognize and acknowledge and create space for parents to think about what are your feelings, what are your beliefs about autism, what are your beliefs about your child, and that those beliefs and feelings matter. They matter to talk about, they matter to think about because they impact your parenting behavior. How you're feeling impacts how you behave. And it's not a judgment or a blame, it's actually an empowerment to say, oh my gosh, if I can also learn strategies and systems for thinking and beliefs and feeling, then my behavior will follow and I'll be more effective. So that's some parting ideas. Don't be hard on yourself. Be your best friend. Try and be gentle with yourself. Be good to yourself because you're being the best parent you can be. Truly, truly, truly.
Thank you so much for Jonathon for meeting with us for our exclusive interview today. This interview did a great job of just streamlining our theme for next month. In the month of September, our theme is But First Mama. It's so important for us to remember that as many systems and as many routines as we put into place for our children, we need to be able to have that same grace and that same celebration for ourselves. And so for the month of September, we're going to be celebrating all of that. I am going to take you on a 30-day self-care journey where I also unpack all of these different systems and different routines that I can put into my life to hopefully help me fill my cup and help you do so along the way.